I'm now live. This is great. We're going to be doing a chat all about food, and I'm going to be speaking to somebody from Hubbub, which is, and I'm just organising that. Here we are. Invite. We're going to be talking food. We're going to be talking how to get really good cheap food, how to get free food as well, and also we're going to have recipes. We've got Mike Breen joining us from Hubbub, and he's actually going to make actual food as we talk, so that's going to be really good. I'm just wondering, I am starting slightly early, oh, hello Hubbub, right, here we are. I can see you. Hello Hubbub. But we're not actually. I can see that you've joined, but I can't actually see you here. So I'm hoping that it's going to work. See, this is what always bothers me about these lives. Right at the start, it's difficult to sort it out because I know that Hubbub's around. Is unable to join. Oh, so Hello Hubbub is unable to join. I don't know why that is. So I'm going to just keep pressing this, see if we can make it work. Oh yes, you're there. Fantastic.
Hello.
Hello, Mike.
Mark.
This always happens. At the beginning of lives, you go, "Are they there? Can we join?" I've tried joining live. And it won't work. So it's fantastic to have you. Mike, introduce yourself, would you? Introduce yourself to the hordes.
Sure. So it's actually Mark. My name is Mark. Not to worry. And I work for Hubbub. I used to be a chef in a previous life. So Hubbub's an environmental charity, and I do lots and lots of things around food, trying to inspire people to eat all of the food they buy, to eat more sustainably, so to eat better for the planet, but also with lots and lots of tips to help people save money. So I guess that's where me and you overlap a little bit, Jasmine.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that Hubbub is an environmental charity. Can you explain what it does and who it helps and how it helps, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. So we're an environmental charity. We work with everyone really. So we work with people. We work to inspire people. We think everybody's an environmentalist, whether they know it or not. Yeah. Every little action that we take can have a positive environmental impact. We also work with big businesses, local authorities, anybody who can help us on our mission to make things better for the planet. We work across lots of different areas. So I've mentioned I'm really interested in food, which is what we're here talking about today. But we look at things like fashion, energy, transport, recycling. So the whole mix really.
Great. So is it coming up with ways that we can all live a bit more environmentally? So I'm talking about fashion, for example. That's something we've written about. I've spoken a lot where fashion is a nightmare for the environment, etc. So you finding ways that we all live in a more green way.
Yeah, that's it. I think we all want to do our little bit for the planet, and it's just making how we do that nice and simple for people, because it's not always clear, and there's sometimes a little bit of greenwashing out there. So we're being told that we're doing the right thing when we might not necessarily be. So we just try and get kind of under the skin of an issue. And then we make it as simple as possible for people to make really good environmental choices.
Great. So we are, as you say, Mark, here to talk about food, how to get food cheaper, how to make the most of what you've got. And I'm very keen to speak to you because I'm talking a lot about the food situation. It's not, the prices are going, it looks like they're going to go up even more this year. Yeah. So let's start. Would you start with what you would describe as your tips, your fundamental for us all to live by, to make sure that we get fed properly at a lower cost?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you 5 top tips if that's okay today. And the first 3 are all around food waste. So making sure that we everything that we buy. We waste a lot of food in the UK. We waste 6.5 million tonnes of food, and about 70% of that could be eaten. So it's not the bones, it's not the skin on your onion, all that kind of thing. Yeah. And interestingly, although we all think it's the big supermarkets and the restaurants that are wasting all the food, we all need to look a little bit closer to home, because just over 71% of food waste happens in people's houses. So yeah, I'm sorry to tell you that, Jasmine. Yeah, it is. It's me and you that are causing some of the problem. The supermarkets, they're big businesses, aren't they? And they're quite efficient. So they want to make money. That's their aim. So food that they waste is money they're not making. And actually, it's the same for us. So food that we waste, food that we let go past its sell-by date, is money we could be spending on something else, or spending on food, more importantly.
So you mentioned, Mark, sell-by date. Now this is an issue for me, because I think there are in the world, there are people like me who will eat it so long as it's not walking out of the fridge on its own legs, and then there are other people who throw it away. It's past its best before date, even. So, what do you think is the ideal here when it comes to sell-by date? Is it basically the sniff test? Should we actually be doing that rather than the label says this, I must throw it away? What do you think?
I mean, that's certainly what I do. I mean, that's what I do. Yeah, if you've got some milk, you know better, you can smell it, you can taste it, can't you? It's not going to kill you to sniff it. But the other thing, this comes back to my 5 top tips that I was going to give you, actually, Jasmine, and I might jump into those, because the first one is storing your food properly. So if you've bought, for example, a bottle of, in fact, I've got one defrosting here. If you bought a bottle of milk, or say you bought 2 bottles of milk, you've got one in the fridge, you know you're going to use that by its use-by date, or by the time that you've had the sniff test.
Yeah.
So you're quite happy with that. But then for the second bottle of milk, you're not sure, you probably won't get through that by the time it needs to be drank. So, there's a few ways to store it. Number one, I've said put it in the fridge, but if you need to put a pause button on that, pop it in the freezer. And I think the freezer is one of our best friends in the kitchen in terms of saving food and saving money. For example, sliced bread, I don't usually leave that on the side. I certainly don't put it in the fridge because it goes mouldy, but I put it in the freezer and take straight from the freezer to toast things off. But if people head to our website, so it's Hubbub, and just Google Hubbub ways to save food.
Yeah.
And it'll link through also to Love Food Hate Waste. They've got an A to Z of every food. So rather than me telling you what to do with your tomatoes or what to do with your, apples, that's the best website to check absolutely everything. That's what I go there and I kind of know what I'm doing.
Speaking of storage, sorry, Mark. Speaking of storage, I'm sort of quite typical female in that I love storage boxes. I love these things, clippets. I use those clippets, to put at the top of a packet of biscuits. It's wonderful for keeping things fresh and for weeks, months. They're sacred. So, do you have tips on that sort of storage as well on the website?
I'm on the not particularly. No, I think generally the guide is whatever way you do it. Things are generally better kept in a sealed container. We know that oxygen and moisture and heat ruin things generally. So certainly, my cheese, I'm saving in the fridge here. Just like you, it doesn't matter really there's probably a couple of types of cheese in there, but they're kept in that. They stop the fridge from getting stunk out, but also it keeps the cheese a little bit fresher.
Yes. Oh, actually, now we've got some interesting. Now everything's still. Everything Isabel. She says, I've heard that if you put carrots and celery in water in the fridge, they last much longer. Is that true, Mark?
I don't know. It sounds like Isabel's done. It sounds like Isabel's done the experimentation on that one. So I'll have to trust her and maybe give it a go. It sounds like it's good to me. I was just going to say the next way to kind of reduce the amount of money that you spend on food is to plan what you're going to eat. And you don't need to be too extensive in that, but just jotting down somewhere, whether you've got a chalkboard in your kitchen or just a scrap of paper, what meals are you going to eat in the week? And before you do that, have a little look in the fridge to see what you've got, because I think, we've all been guilty of going to the shops without knowing what we've got in. Yeah. And that's how, you shove the new stuff on top of the old stuff, and then it all goes a bit haywire, doesn't it?
It does, yes. I tell you, one thing that I'd say to people, and I've got to do this myself this weekend, is to go through your store cupboards and see what's been there for months, possibly years in my case, and use and make sure that you only buy in the supermarkets things that will go with what you've got in those stores. Because otherwise, these packets just they stay there for years. Come on, start using this up. So that's one thing I'm going to do. I'm going to be going through. I have a very glamorous life. Weekend, I shall go through some of my store cupboards and see what needs to be used.
It's good, and I think it's probably a little bit of laziness on all of our parts, isn't it? Like, there's so much to do in the day, and there's really a book you want to read or a box set you want to watch, and maybe it's not the most fun having a look through your cupboard. So how can you make it fun? Get the tunes on, have a nice cup of tea while you're doing it, get the family involved. That's, you've got to make these things fun where you can.
Exactly. So what about your other tips, Mark? We've been through a couple of them. How many have we done so far?
We've done two. It might have felt like 10, but we've done two. we've done two. So I'll come back to my final one on food waste, because I might just prepare a quick dish actually.
Oh yes, let's have a dish now, because it could be rather exciting from an actual chef.
Shall I do that now while we're chatting? So I don't know how much of. I'll just angle that down a little bit. Yeah. I'm having a cup of tea while I'm chatting to you. So one of the best things. Sorry, you can see my head now. One of the best things that we can do is make sure we use up everything we've got. So loving our leftovers, whether that's a meal we've cooked the day before and we've got some bolognese left that we can have in a jacket potato that was on spaghetti the day before, but also using up the bits and bobs that aren't the best. So you can hear that piece of bread.
Oh, yeah.
It's not at its ripest. And I was thinking, as we come into summer, like some nice ideas that I wanted to give to people around using, if you've got a glut of tomatoes, as I've got here, not quite in season yet, but they will be by the time people start thinking about it. And I've got some very stale bread, so it doesn't matter if these tomatoes are squidgy and a little bit over, and it certainly is helpful if this bread is stale. There's lots of different things you can do: bread, croutons, breadcrumbs. Lots and lots of different things. But while we're chatting, Jasmine, I was just going to prepare what I call Panzernella. It's a bread and stale bread and tomato stew. It's an Italian dish.
Oh, wow.
And you can basically use what you've got in the fridge, but I've got a shallot here. You could use a red onion. I've got like a little charred red pepper that was just odd. As you can see, it's the very last straggler. Yeah. So that's going to be chopped up and go in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to chop up the... sorry, it's either my head or the tomatoes that you can see at the moment.
We want to see what you're doing with your hands, so that's...
So I'm just going to chop those tomatoes up. And as I say, it doesn't really matter if they're a little... These ones aren't, but if these were a little bit ripe, or overripe, absolutely fine. So they can all go into the bowl. And what I'm looking to do is bring the flavour out of those tomatoes to turn this kind of bread that could otherwise end up, getting chucked away into something delicious. And I think, we can all, if you've been given, I don't know, some really, really good ingredients, you've been given steak and chips to cook and a béarnaise sauce if you're into eating meat, or you've been given some truffles to cook. We can all cook at that stage, can't we?
Yes.
There's a bit of skill that goes into cooking those dishes, but really, if you can't cook that food, you've got problems. Yeah. But the real skill comes in when you're using kind of what you've got in the leftover odds and sods, or whatever you want to call them.
Yes.
And that's where just a little bit of imagination can come in, but it's not complicated. It's kind of what I want to get across to people. This is how I cook on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Just, I do a little bit of planning, and then at the end of the week, we have a little look in the fridge, and we see what's there or what's been left in the freezer, and we turn it into something nice or heat it through. I think people are sometimes a little bit concerned about, how can you eat leftover food? How long can you keep it for, and that kind of thing, and how do you make sure it's safe for you and your family?
Yeah.
Well, the idea is, say you cooked. I use the egg bolognese example again. Say you cooked a nice bolognese.
Yeah.
I'm just chopping up the shallot and popping this in with the tomatoes while we do this.
Excellent.
But when you cook a nice bolognese dish, whether it's veggie, whether it's meat, it doesn't matter particularly. You then need to cool it down as quickly as possible. So get it out of the pan, get it into a Tupperware with the lid off.
Yes.
And then as soon as it hits room temperature, get it in the fridge, get a lid on it, and then you've got 2 days. To be honest, I go to 3, but I'm not advising anybody on that.
Well, exactly. I would be a 3 because, as I say, unless it's walking out on a place, I assume I found time.
Yeah, and if you think it's going to be longer, what do you do? I gave everybody a little tip at the start of the IG live, which was get it in the freezer, and you've got your own little takeaway restaurant set up there, ready for later in the week.
Exactly. Yeah.
And all you need to do is make sure you heat, whether it's in the microwave, which incidentally is one of the most energy efficient ways of heating something up, or in a pan on the hob. You just need to cook it until it's bubbling.
Right.
And then happy days, you'll be nice and safe. It will have killed any bacteria that was ever in there, and you'll be in good shape. Just coming back to this panzernella, so I've just got the tomatoes and the shallots in there.
Okay.
And I'm just going to pop just a little bit of, it doesn't really matter what vinegar. It's not a particularly expensive one, but I've got red wine vinegar there. But any kind of vinegar, it doesn't have to be a fancy down one. And a little bit of salt, and that just take the edge off those shallots, and just start to draw the juice out of the tomatoes. And the juice, because we know that bread is rock hard.
Yes.
That juice, when it starts to come out of those tomatoes, will be what kind of combines to flavour up that bread. So I'm just going to leave that for a few minutes while we carry on chatting. Jasmine, I wondered if you could tell, because I know you, and this is something I might know maybe less than you about. I know you've got a campaign at the moment around veganism.
Exactly. Yeah, we have. We're trying to legalise veganism. It's something I've been interested in for years, because it used to be that you could basically go and dumpster dive behind, and then they stopped it. I do understand it. It's the legal thing. They're worried. Supermarkets are worried about people coming back going, I had this, and they actually got it out of dumpster. So I do understand that, but I think we have a way in which it's legalised, so there's some sort of, maybe you put a stamp on the product and literally sign something, I absolve the supermarket of any problem, blah, blah, blah. And the food should be just placed on a table saying, take it, take whatever you like. Because, as you said, we waste horrendous amounts. Most of it is us. It's not as much the supermarkets, but supermarkets, there comes a point where they have to throw it away. Legally, they have to throw it away. So legally, we, the people, should be allowed to have it. So, we've got a .org saying veganism. So if anybody could go to change.org, but legalise veganism, come and sign that, then the government.
And is it with the? What I'm thinking about here, while you talk me through that, and it all makes really good sense to me. But are there particular items that, if people are looking out for picking up free items, what, I suppose my first question is, what should they be looking out to kind of pick up in that way?
Exactly. Well, my feeling, probably meat and fish, I think are a bit tricky, honestly. Again, you can do a sniff, but pretty much everything else, including dairy. I think I've seen yogurt pots, whole pots of yogurt thrown out, and I think I've had yogurt in my fridge for weeks and it's been fine. Literally, no.
Yeah.
So I think, fish. Go maybe not. Meat, I'd have to test it, but everything else, I'd fair game.
Oh, that's really interesting. I did just having a think about our conversation ahead of time. I was thinking about some of the apps that are out there at the moment to help people kind of share leftover food, whether it's through businesses or through. I mean, what's your favourite one of those if you've got one?
Yes, there's Too Good To Go, of course, and there's Opto. I think they're both excellent and so needed at the moment. And the other things that I mentioned, there are a couple of websites. I don't know if you know them. There's approvedfood.co.uk.
I've not heard of that, actually.
Oh, it's worth having a look. And Cheap Food as well. I think it's Cheap Food or cheapfoods.co.uk. And both of them, well, certainly Approved Food, that's one that I have in the past. The idea of to take food that are out of season or sort of end of lines. So it's been after its best before. It's probably not after its sell by, but it's after its best before quite often. Not always, by any means. It's just out of season. I haven't looked at the moment. They've probably got Christmas cakes and, Christmas things and stuff like that.
They last forever, don't they, as well?
Yeah, exactly. The kind of thing. And they'll get some Cadbury's cream eggs in the next few days, I'm sure. So it's that kind of thing. You order online, it's a really good idea. Again, just any way to get the food to people's mouths, I think, rather than into landfill is a good idea. Another thing that I do, and I'm sure you do this as well, is I live fairly near an outdoor market, street market, fruit veg. And towards the end of the day, sometimes I get a whole tray of something, maybe tomatoes. I've done this in the past, but a whole tray of tomatoes for a £5. Then I need somebody like you to go, right, here's what you do with all of these tomatoes. Quite often I give some to neighbours, because there are so many. But, that thing is, I think, great to make into soup, stews, whatever, and as I say, put into the freezer.
That's really good. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned kind of sharing with neighbours and that kind of thing, and I think that's and that is what the Olio app speaks to, isn't it? It's people who've got, in my case, too many tomatoes. That's really good. We've also at Hubbub, we've got something called the community fridges, which is a great way. Not only so supermarkets, food that's coming towards the point or is past the point that they can sell, and also people if they've got an allotment and they've grown a glut of courgettes. As always, I mean, courgettes can fly out the ground some years, don't they? But community fridges are kind of a nice social space where people can address the issue of food waste as a community. Yeah. And we've got, I think we've got around 300 across the UK at the moment.
Yes.
Yeah, and we're looking to take those numbers up to 500. So people aren't means tested. There's nothing like that. It's a social space. They're often in community centres, cafes, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's just a great way of communities coming together and addressing the issue of food waste. I think we saved, I'm sure, 7.5 million, or the equivalent of 7.5 million meals last year through that. So, yeah. Because
I've been interested in community fridges for a few years now, because it's not very widely known about, and I do think that it should be more widely known and more of them. So how does it actually? Are they? You're saying you cite this fridge? I assume it's a big fridge in sort of a local community space, maybe a council space or something.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, community fridge. It could be community fridges in one location. It could be 1, 2, or 3 or 4 fridges and a freezer. And yeah, it's open up for the community. It's not like a food bank, you know, that's means tested, and people come together. They might bring something of their own in. They might volunteer, and often the volunteers take from the food banks. But we all know also that there's, aside from the big issue of food waste, we know that, as you said, the cost of living is going up. Yes. We did some polling at Hubbub earlier in March this year, and we picked up that 1 in 6 people are worried that they're going to go hungry in the next year. I mean, let me pause. I'm a chit chatter, but let me pause for a sec, because 1 in 6 people in the UK are worried that they're going to go hungry in the next year. Let's let that sink in just for a second.
It's huge. It's 15%, essentially. 15% of the population are genuinely worried that they're going to go hungry. And it's not just this country either. This is a global thing. And it's, I mean, 2022, it's insane. So wrong, so unnecessary. So, yeah, the more of us that somehow help each other to eat and to stop worrying about being able to eat, the better. We need to come together. And this is one of the reasons why I so love the idea of community fridges. By the way, Mike Child has just commented that he said, I always end up sharing surplus food that I've grown with neighbours and friends. Yeah, brilliant.
Good chat. I wish I was your neighbour. I'm growing a little bit. I could do with a bit of your spare. Just while we're carrying on cooking, so those tomatoes, just while we're carrying on talking, those tomatoes and shallots, you can see the juice has started to come out of those tomatoes. I think you can. Now you can. Excellent. The juice has started to come out of those tomatoes. So that is going to do my leftover, very, very stale bread. Hopefully it doesn't smell my side. A flavour in just a moment. Because it's gonna soak all of that up and just bring that bread back to life. I have got some olive oil because it's an Italian dish.
Yes.
And actually something that a lot of people are doing, and I've done, because is swap their supermarkets. Or swap where they buy their food, whether it's, to a local market or a cheaper supermarket. So I used to love a website called Farm Crop. They actually went bust last year, but lovely farm produce delivered to your door. But the prices went up and up and up, and then they went bust.
Yeah.
And the cost of food generally everywhere has gone up, and I've swapped. So I hunt around a little bit more for where I buy my food. I was in Aldi yesterday and got this 1 litre of olive oil, which was, I think, £2.69.
So good. So good.
So you've got to look out for those bargains. The other thing I've done is I've downloaded the Honey app, which gives money off at different supermarkets from time to time with codes. Have you used that, Jasmine?
I do, yes, I have it actually. I've got it on my laptop. And you get off, or you get what they call honey gold, which you can use for other things. It's a one to have, I think. And another thing about sharing, I'm not a member of Costco or one of those, but some people are. And if you remember, you could go and get big, just huge crates full of certain things and then share it about with family and neighbours. If you all get together, everybody order, I'll have X number of tins of beans and X number of, packets of crisps. So a couple of goes and you get these big lots from a wholesaler and then spread it around friends and neighbours. And that can bring things. I mean, similarly, I think, like I mentioned about the street markets, if you get a few trays of these, then spread it around neighbours and friends, and everybody can have some for a quick.
Yeah, those are really, really good tips, and I'm sure everybody in the chat's got their own tips as well. I'd love to see more of you, because I'm always looking for ideas. So if any of you who are there watching, what's your top tip? I'd love to hear some of those.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got one from Isabel again. Isabel, so she actually she says she's using her leftover bouquet, turned it into a chili. spag bol and turned it into a bite of kidney beans. That's always a good one, actually. Sort of making it go further. Mince is a really good one, I think. So it's quite a cheap meat because you can put lots of things in, and putting kidney beans in, other beans, etc. That really, and chili, of course. That could really make it go further. And as you said, you're using up stuff from yesterday or the day before in a really clever way.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely it. And there's ways to stretch your dishes, isn't there? That's like a bit of a chefy term. How do we stretch this? How do we keep some really good flavours, but how do we increase the profit? Or how do we save some money? Actually, the mince is a cheap meat, but I tell you what's a cheaper form of protein: lentils. Yeah. So get some lentils through that bolognese. We did a price comparison actually on I think 5 different dishes. If you go to the Hubbub Instagram account, it's one of the more recent posts, and compared the plant-based version. And I'm not talking about the fancy, too much plastic packaging plant-based versions of things, but I'm talking about proper cooking with beans and lentils and pulses. They're incredibly cheap. And if people are worried about getting enough protein in their diets, that's where I'd be looking to spend my money, because you get so much more bang for your buck.
That's true. I tell you, something else I was going to say to you is about, you mentioned allotments. I said to my brother the other day, my brother lives in Sussex and he's got a nice garden. He has got a vegetable patch and got some fruit trees. But I said to him, look, seriously, if I were in your position, I'd turn the whole garden into vegetable and fruit, and I would have pickles now. Sadly, I don't. I'll show you. I've got a patio. If you can see, I've got nice flowers and things.
Oh, beautiful though.
I love my patio, but I'm thinking I could do with putting some vegetables out there. But what I will do is some tomatoes and definitely some herbs.
Yes.
Those are some things. And I have seen somebody sent me, and I can't remember what it was, but somebody sent me pictures of some vegetables being grown on the wall in like little pots. And they actually look quite, some vegetables, I'm trying to think, some of the leafy vegetables, some onions, and certainly asparagus look really nice. So, sometimes you could at least get some nice looking vegetables.
Yeah. And actually, to be honest, like even things like because I've got a little, I live in South London, I've got a little kind of yard garden, and I do have a few plants, but last year I tried to grow some heritage crops. Delicious, beautiful, but you don't get many of them. So this year I've gone back to basics. So I'm growing courgettes, tomatoes and beans.
Yeah.
And that's it really, a few herbs. But all of those 3 things, you can, if you're lucky enough like me to have a little yard or have a proper garden like some people have, but you can grow all of those things on a balcony, and I've seen that done. So, 15-litre pots.
Right.
Used again and again, year on year.
Excellent. Harry says, grow bags, Jasmine. You can grow in small.
Exactly.
You're right, absolutely, grow bags. And then my child says, you can still grow things even in a small space. Now, manage to, in hanging basket, for instance. Oh, mange too, in hanging basket. That's a good idea,
Mange too, Rodney, mange too.
Mange too in hanging baskets. Why not? I'll give that a go. And yes, compost bags as well, absolutely.
There we go. We're all learning today, aren't we?
Sorry?
We're all learning today, aren't we?
We are, absolutely. Well, this is what I say, because I do money courses, and I do, saving courses within companies, and I say, tell me your ideas, because everybody's got them. We've all got little hacks. Yeah. We'll try out. Like you say, you mentioned honey, which is handy one. I happen to have that. A lot of people don't. And then something that I often talk about with getting free food is becoming a mystery shopper. I don't know if you've ever done that, Mark, but
no, I haven't.
Some way back, I've got an article on MoneyMagpie about it, and I get free meals at Pizza Express, I used to get sandwiches delivered by I used to have in a pub chain, and all you have to do is you have to sort of write about it afterwards. I'm quite opinionated anyway, so I'm be asked, what do you think? Was the service all right? Did you know all of that? So that was
a bit of fun as well whilst getting some free food. Then offering an opinion on things. That sounds good to me.
Yeah. And also competitions. Again, on MoneyMagpie, we do competitions every day, and some of them involve food. And then there are competitions. I mean, you can put something in Instagram, just put #competition or comp, whatever, and loads of competitions will come up. And quite a lot of them will involve food or things. It's great, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's it. There's lots of things out there if you look for them. I've got one last tip that I wanted to give you. I'll squeeze it in if that's okay. And then what I'll do is I'll pop this salad I've been making while we've been chatting out on a plate so people can see what you can do with next to, well, not next to nothing because the tomatoes were lovely, but, an old shallot, some lovely tomatoes and a stale peel of bread. My last tip is around energy efficiency in the kitchen.
Good.
So this is getting more and more of an issue. We all know what's happening in Ukraine, and we know the impact that that's having on food prices, and we know the impact, or we're going to have to find out if we don't know already, the impact that's having on energy prices, which is not pretty. But the kitchen, we've got our fridge, we've got our cooker, we've got our kettle. It's one of the most energy explosive rooms in the house, and it's the one to really keep an eye on. So I'll give you just a few little hints, but just a little bit of mindfulness, I think, when you're in the kitchen, like what's going on in here? How am I cooking? Why am I doing it like this? So the first one is with the kettle. I did a little test actually just to check that what I was telling people on this was correct. But only boil what you need in the kettle.
Yeah.
The kettle's either on or it's off, and the longer it takes to cook, the more energy it uses. The more energy it uses. So only use what you need. And I did a little test actually because someone asked me, well, what about if I boil a litre of water, use 500 millilitres and come back and use the next 500 millilitres? I timed it like cooking from cold and boiling from cold and boiling from warm. It's more efficient every time to boil exactly what you need. I'll jot down the numbers for you if anybody's that interested. The other thing is, when you're cooking, don't keep opening and closing the cupboard door to have a look in, because you're letting the heat out all the time. Cook if you're cooking one jacket potato, cook 5 jacket potatoes. And then chill them or freeze them and just warm them up, because you don't want to be using all that heat to heat up that big space just for one piddly little jacket potato. Keep your lids on your saucepans. That's a good message for everybody, because otherwise the heat's just coming out and you're spending your money on gas or electric, and it's going everywhere. When you're baking a cake, don't bake a massive cake. Split the ingredients down and make some beautiful little muffins or cupcakes, because they'll cook in 20 minutes rather than 40 minutes.
Right.
I think that'll do for now. I've banged on.
Yeah. Well, those are great. Actually, one thing I remember having a discussion with a friend. Full and frank exchange of views. I'm right. No, I'm right. No, I'm right. I said when it comes to cooking and boiling vegetables, you're better off boiling water in the kettle first, rather than putting it in cold in the pan and it up that way. I don't know. What do you think?
I had the same discussion, and I've actually got a gas hob, so I'm in big trouble this year in many numbers of ways. For me, I think boiling it in the kettle, it's quicker.
Yes.
And electric is better for the environment and cheaper than gas. So for me, kettle then hob, but willing to be proved wrong.
Vicky, I read an article today on MoneyMagpie, a good woman, about what he's talking about with electrics. Yeah, interesting. It's true. I think the kitchen is, on the whole, the biggest energy user, apart from and I've been looking at some. I mean, you mentioned the microwave, but there are other ways of being cheaper. There's Lakeland does a Ramoska. I've actually got a Ramoska. Have you ever used one of those, Mark?
What? No, is it a slow cooker? Sorry. What?
It's sort of. It's not slow. It's a kind of mini. So sort of pot, and it's got a big lid, and the lid has an element, a heated element in it. So you just plug it into the wall, and it means that, for example, if you just want to do a baked potato, who doesn't just want to do a baked potato? You can just do it in that rather than have a whole oven. In fact, what I usually do is I sort of half cook it in the microwave, and then I finish it off in the Ramoska. And you can bake cakes in it. You can do. I do fish, vegetables, all sorts. So it's particularly good if you live on your own, or just two, or you just want to, heat up as you say, or heat up a cracker. It's nice to have it up. You don't want to put it all up.
Yeah, that sounds great. Or to be frank, if you can't afford an oven, because this is probably a fair bit cheaper, isn't it, as well?
Absolutely, yeah. You can get. I think it's about £50 now. Cheaper before, but you can get them on eBay as well. Them second hand. And the other thing, of course, is the air fryer. I'm planning on. People say you can cook everything in an air fryer, and it's really, really, really good on energy, and therefore cheaper to run.
Yeah, I haven't got one of those either. I'm such an old school cook, so I do need to start listening to these little tips. I haven't got a microwave actually, which I should get, but I do. I mean, I'm so good in many ways around food waste, but I could do a little bit more on some of these other areas actually. So learning all the time. Actually,
I had a friend, a marvelous woman. She passed on when she was 2, and I knew her for a long time, and she showed me how to get a Pyrex stick, and she would chop up vegetables. Could be all sorts, potatoes, carrots, put mushrooms, tomatoes, whatever, and quite a lot of butter. Put the Pyrex lid on, stick it in the microwave, and 4, 5, and it came out beautifully. It was really good. So
really tasty,
easy. Where it's so much about that is good. You've got less electricity, easy, and also you've only got one pot to wash up, which is a big deal as well. So.
That makes great sense to me. Right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to plate up this food, and show you what I've been beavering away at while we've been sharing all these great tips.
It's a good thing. People can have their lunch in a minute. They'll be getting hungry.
Yeah, everyone needs to get up now. Oh yeah, we can see that there. Just checking what we can see. So this is the Panzernella made with some tomatoes, which could be as overripe as you like. Just when in the past you might have thought, I'm not sure about those. They're the ones to use because they'll be the juiciest. And then the stainless, and we all heard me banging it on the surface. The stainless bread.
Yeah.
The staler the better, to be honest, for this. Bread doesn't tend to go moldy. It only really tends to go mouldy if you put it in the fridge. But it just tends to go hard. So that, I don't know if we can see that.
Yes, that looks lovely. And you just put salt and vinegar in it, basically.
So it had some vinegar and some salt just to start it off. Yeah. And then just to start to draw the juice out of the onion and the tomatoes. And then a little bit of pepper, some olive oil. And I've just got a little bit of basil, which was actually this basil. And I'm going to pop this out, plant this out in the garden. 60p from Aldi yesterday.
That's good.
That's good. It's not bad, is it? No. So yeah, happy days. I'm gonna go and have my lunch. I'm gonna say bye.
Yes, it's been great to speak to you, Mark. Thank you very much. Hope we can do this again sometime. Do another recipe. Thank you so much for joining us. So Mark Green from Hubbub. Go and have a look at Hubbub to get lots of ideas for saving money on food and all sorts. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you for watching. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.